Kethra stared at her computer screen and blinked all four of her eyes. Something was wrong. The numbers didn't make sense. She had worked in the biological classification department for 12 years now. Every species that wanted to join the Galactic Concordat had to submit DNA samples. It was her job to analyze them. Usually, it took about an hour. She would scan the genetic code, compare it to the database, and file a simple report. Most species were herbivores who ate plants. Some were omnivores who ate both plants and small insects. Very rarely she found a predator. Predators were different. They were dangerous. The galaxy had strict rules about them. Kethra looked at the sample container on her desk. Inside was a small amount of blood from the newest species asking to join. They called themselves humans. They came from a planet named Earth, far out in the spiral arm of the galaxy. Their delegation had arrived 3 days ago on a small but impressive ship. She had seen their leader briefly in the hallway. Captain Sarah Chen was her name. She was tall, with brown skin and black hair tied back. She had smiled at Kethra when they passed. Kethra remembered feeling slightly uncomfortable, though she didn't know why at the time. Now she knew. The computer screen flashed red. Warning symbols appeared across the display. Kethra's hand trembled as she reached for the controls. She ran the scan again. Maybe there was a mistake. Maybe the sample was contaminated. The computer processed the DNA a second time. The same results appeared. Predator classification detected. Genetic markers 342 identified. Preliminary assessment apex predator. Threat level class 7. Kethra felt her hearts beating faster. She had 2 hearts, like all Velusians. Both of them were racing now. Class 7. That was the highest threat level in the database. She had never seen a Class 7 before. Nobody had. The last Class 7 species had destroyed themselves in wars thousands of years ago, long before they ever built spaceships. They killed each other before they could reach the stars. But humans had built spaceships. They had traveled across space. They had created art and music and asked politely to join the Concordat. How was that possible? Kethra opened the detailed analysis. Her eyes moved down the list of genetic traits. Each one made her more frightened. Forward-facing eyes. That meant humans had binocular vision, the kind predators use to track prey. Most civilized species had eyes on the sides of their heads to watch for danger. Exceptional endurance. The note said humans could run for hours without stopping. They chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. What kind of monster did that? Omnivorous diet with pronounced canines. Humans had sharp teeth designed to tear meat. They still ate meat. Even now, after building computers and spaceships, they killed animals and ate them. High pain tolerance, enhanced adrenaline response, accurate throwing ability evolved for distance killing. The list went on and on. Kethra stood up from her desk. Her legs felt weak. She needed to tell someone. This was too important for a junior scientist to handle alone. She walked quickly through the corridor to Administrator Vorn's office. Other workers moved aside as she passed. They could probably see the fear on her face. Velusians couldn't hide emotions well. Their translucent skin showed everything. Vorn was studying reports when she entered. He was a Quillan, small and covered in soft fur. He looked up with his large, gentle eyes. "Kethra, what's wrong? You look terrified." "The human sample," she said. Her voice was shaking. "Administrator, we have a problem. A big problem." She placed her tablet on his desk and showed him the results. Vorn's fur stood on end as he read. That was a fear response for his species. He read the report twice, then looked up at her. "This can't be right," he said. "Run it again." "I already did. 3 times. The results are the same." Vorn stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars shone brightly around the space station. Somewhere out there was Earth, home to these apex predators who had somehow learned to build ships and computers. Class 7th, Vorn said quietly. The database says Class 7 predators always destroy themselves. Violence is in their nature. They fight and kill until nothing is left. I know, Kethra said. But these humans didn't destroy themselves. They're here. They're asking to join us. Maybe they're different, Vorn suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. Or maybe they're hiding what they really are, Kethra replied. Maybe they're waiting, learning about us, finding our weaknesses. The thought terrified her. The human delegation had full access to most of the station. They had been touring the facilities, meeting other species, asking questions. What if they were gathering intelligence? What if this was all a plan? Vorn made a decision. We need a full genetic deep scan. I want every chromosome analyzed, every protein mapped. I want to know exactly what these humans are. That will take days, Kethra said. Then we work fast. Vorn pressed a button on his desk. I'm also ordering surveillance on the human delegation. Nothing invasive, just monitoring. Where they go, who they talk to, what they do. Should we warn the council? Kethra asked. Not yet. Not until we're certain. But Kethra... He looked at her seriously. Don't be alone with any of them. If they are what the database says they are, they're the most dangerous species we've ever encountered. Kethra nodded and left his office. She returned to her lab and began the deep scan process. The computer would work all night analyzing millions of genetic sequences. She tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept wandering. She thought about Captain Chen's smile in the hallway. At the time, it had seemed friendly. Now Kethra remembered something else about it. The captain had shown her teeth. For humans, maybe that was normal. But Kethra had studied predator species her entire career. She knew what showing teeth meant. It was a threat display. A warning. She looked at the sample container again. Inside was the blood of an apex predator, the most dangerous kind of creature in the known galaxy. And there were billions of them on Earth, all with ships, all with technology, all waiting. Kethra's computer beeped. The deep scan had begun. Results would come in slowly over the next few days. Each result would tell them more about what humans really were. She had a feeling she wouldn't like what they found. Outside her lab window, she could see the human ship docked at the station. It looked peaceful and quiet, but now she knew better. Inside that ship were apex predators, and they had come to meet the galaxy. Kethra wondered if the galaxy was ready for them. She wondered if anyone could ever be ready for a Class 7 predator that had learned to smile. The laboratory was crowded with scientists. Kethra had never seen so many people in the genetics lab before. Administrator Vorn had called in experts from 6 different departments. They all stood around the main display screen, watching as new data appeared. 3 days had passed since Kethra first scanned the human DNA. 3 days of constant analysis, and every new discovery was worse than the last. Dr. Mixel, a crystalline Shardian, pointed at the screen with one of his many arms. Look at this protein sequence. It controls adrenaline production. Humans can increase their strength by 30% in moments of stress. Their bodies literally prepare them to fight or chase prey. That's not the worst part, added Dr. Yenna, a floating gossamer who hovered near the ceiling. Look at their muscle structure. They have slow-twitch and fast-twitch fibers in perfect balance. They can sprint short distances and run marathons. No other species has both abilities. Kethra pulled up another chart. And their eyesight. They see in color, which helps them spot prey. They have excellent depth perception for judging distances, and they can track movement better than any species in the Concordat. Administrator Vorn stood in the corner, listening. His fur had remained standing on end for 3 days now. He looked like he hadn't slept. What about their brain? He asked. Intelligence can overcome instinct. Maybe they're smart enough to control their predatory nature. Dr. Mixel made a sound like grinding glass. That was how Shardians laughed. Oh, they're smart, very smart, but Administrator, look at what they use their intelligence for. He brought up a new file. It was from Earth's cultural database, submitted as part of their application to the Concordat. These are called sports, Dr. Mixel explained. Humans compete against each other for fun. Football, boxing, wrestling, racing. They simulate hunting and fighting, even though they don't need to anymore. The instinct is so strong, they turn it into entertainment. Dr. Yenna added more files. And look at this. They call these horror movies. Humans pay money to watch stories that frighten them. They enjoy feeling fear. What kind of species does that? A predator species, Vorn said quietly. One that needs to keep its hunting instincts sharp. Kethra pulled up the dietary information. According to their records, 70% of humans still eat meat regularly. They've had the technology to synthesize protein for 100 years, but most of them choose to eat dead animals anyway. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. They haven't evolved past it, Dr. Yenna whispered. They're still active predators. Vorn touched a control panel. I need to show you something else, something the surveillance team found. A video appeared on the screen. It showed the human delegation in the station's common area. Captain Chen and her crew were having a meal. They were laughing and talking. Everything looked normal. Then one of the humans told a joke. The others laughed, and Kethra saw their teeth. All of them showed their teeth when they laughed. Threat display, Dr. Mixel said. They do it constantly. To each other, to us, to everyone. And look how relaxed they are. They're not afraid at all. Why would they be? Kethra said. They're the apex predators. Nothing in this station could threaten them. Vorn fast-forwarded the video. Watch this part. The video showed a Quillen child running through the common area. The child was chasing a floating ball. She ran right past the human table. One of the humans, a man named James Okafor, reached out and caught the ball. The child stopped, suddenly afraid. She was face-to-face with a human. Everyone in the lab held their breath watching the recording. The human smiled. He handed the ball back to the child and said something. The child took the ball and ran away quickly. What did he say? Dr. Yenna asked. Vorn played the audio. He said, "Be careful, little one, don't want you to fall." So? Dr. Mixel asked. What's wrong with that? Nothing is wrong with it, Vorn said. That's what concerns me. His instinct should be to see that child as prey, small, weak, running. Every predator instinct should have activated, but he helped her instead. Kethra understood. You're saying they can control it? I'm saying they can hide it, Vorn corrected, which makes them even more dangerous. He pulled up the final analysis report. The deep scan is complete. The conclusion is clear. Humans are Class 7 apex predators. According to every model we have, they should have destroyed themselves long ago. But they didn't. Instead, they built a civilization. They created art and music. They developed science and philosophy. And then they built spaceships and came looking for us. What do we do? Kethra asked. Vorn was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I'm calling an emergency council session. This decision is too important for one department. 2 hours later, the council chamber was full. Representatives from all the major species sat in their designated areas. Kethra stood next to Vorn at the presentation podium. She had never spoken to the council before. Her hands were shaking. Vorn presented the evidence. He showed the genetic data, the cultural information, the threat assessment. With each new piece of information, the council members became more agitated. Councillor Prex, the head of the Quillen delegation, stood up. He was small and round, with soft white fur. His voice was high and frightened. This is unacceptable, he shouted. We cannot allow apex predators into the Concordat. They'll hunt us. They'll kill us. Other voices joined his. The chamber filled with frightened sounds. Order! The council speaker, a wise old Velusian named Thera, called for silence. We will discuss this calmly. But there was no calm discussion. For an hour, the council argued. Some wanted to deny Earth's membership immediately. Others wanted to study the humans more. A few suggested quarantine, keep the humans trapped in their own solar system. Finally, Councillor Prex made a formal proposal. Earth must be denied membership. More than that, we must establish a containment protocol. Automated defense platforms will surround their solar system. If any human ship tries to leave, the platforms will destroy it. That's war, someone objected. We'd be imprisoning an entire species. Better than letting them loose in the galaxy, Prex replied. Class 7 predators cannot be trusted. The database proves it. Every Class 7 species in history destroyed themselves through violence. These humans are an anomaly, yes. But that makes them even more dangerous. They're predators who have learned to hide their nature. The vote was called. Kethra watched as the results appeared on the screen. The proposal passed by a wide margin. Earth would be denied membership and contained. Vorn looked at Kethra. We need to inform the human delegation tomorrow morning. Prepare the genetic evidence. We have to show them why. That night, Kethra couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the video of Dr. Okafor and the Quillen child. The human had been kind, gentle. He could have hurt that child easily, but he helped her instead. She opened her computer and accessed Earth's cultural database. If she was going to condemn an entire species, she wanted to understand them first. She started reading their history. Wars and violence, yes. Terrible things. But also something else. Humans helped each other. They created hospitals to heal the sick. They built schools to teach children. They wrote books about peace and love. She watched their movies. Some were violent, true, but others were beautiful. Stories about friendship and sacrifice, about choosing to do right even when it was hard. She read their philosophy. Humans spent thousands of years asking questions. What is good? What is evil? How should we treat each other? They thought about these things deeply. Kethra stared at her screen as the sun began to rise outside. She had spent all night reading about humans, and now she was more confused than ever. The genetic evidence was clear. Humans were apex predators, dangerous and deadly. But the cultural evidence showed something else, something the database couldn't measure. Humans had a choice, and many of them chose to be kind. She didn't know what that meant, but tomorrow she would have to face Captain Chen and tell her that Earth was being denied membership. Tell her that humanity would be trapped in their solar system forever. Captain Sarah Chen noticed something was wrong the moment she entered the council chamber. Armed guards stood along the walls. She had never seen armed guards at any meeting before. Her crew walked beside her, Dr. James Okafor, their anthropologist, Lieutenant Maria Santos, their pilot, Engineer David Kim, and young Aisha Mensa, their communications officer, 5 humans, representing all of Earth. They had been so hopeful 3 days ago when they arrived. Now the atmosphere felt cold and hostile. Administrator Vorn stood at the center of the chamber. Behind him, massive screens displayed something Sarah couldn't quite see yet. Council members from dozens of species filled the seats. None of them would meet her eyes. Captain Chen, Vorn began. His voice was formal, distant. Thank you for coming. Please stand in the designated area. Sarah led her crew to a spot in the middle of the floor. They were surrounded. Councillor Prex stared at them with obvious fear. Others whispered to each other. We have completed our analysis of your genetic samples, Vorn continued. The Council has made a decision regarding Earth's application for membership. Sarah felt her heart sink. The tone of his voice told her everything. Earth's application is denied, Vorn said. The words echoed in the silent chamber. Furthermore, the Council has voted to implement a containment protocol. Automated defense platforms will be positioned around your solar system. Humanity will not be permitted to expand beyond Earth's star system. For a moment, Sarah couldn't speak. She felt Maria's hand grip her arm. David made a small sound of disbelief. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. I don't understand, Sarah finally said. We've done everything you asked. We submitted all the required documentation. We've been peaceful and cooperative. Why are you denying us? Because of what you are, Vorn replied. He pressed a button, and the screens behind him came to life. Images of human DNA appeared, charts and graphs filled with red warning symbols. Sarah stared at the data. She saw genetic markers labeled with words like predator traits and aggression indicators and threat assessment. Your species, Vorn explained, has been classified as Class 7 apex predators. This is the highest threat level in our database. You possess over 300 genetic markers associated with predatory behavior. He brought up more images. Forward-facing eyes for tracking prey, exceptional endurance for persistence hunting, omnivorous dentition with pronounced canines for tearing meat, high pain tolerance and enhanced adrenaline response for combat. Sarah listened in growing shock. They were describing humans as if they were monsters. You still consume animal flesh, Vorn continued. You engage in competitive sports that simulate hunting and fighting. Your entertainment includes horror and violence. Your history is filled with warfare. These are not the characteristics of a peaceful species. James stepped forward. Wait a minute. You're judging us based on our biology, on our genetics? Genetics are not opinions, Dr. Okafor. They are facts. But they don't tell the whole story, James protested. Yes, humans evolved as hunters. We're omnivores. We have forward-facing eyes, but we also have empathy and compassion and— Irrelevant, Counselor Prex interrupted. Class 7 predators cannot be trusted. The historical data is clear. Every apex predator species either destroys itself or must be contained. You are an anomaly for having survived this long, but that only makes you more dangerous. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. They had traveled for months to get here. Earth had sent its best people, its brightest minds. They had come in peace, with open hands and hopeful hearts, and they were being treated like criminals because of their DNA. So that's it? Sarah's voice was sharp. You're going to trap us in our own solar system? Based on what we might do? Not on anything we've actually done? You are predators, Vorn said simply. It is your nature to hunt and kill. We cannot risk the safety of 847 species on the hope that you will control your instincts. Maria spoke up, her voice shaking with emotion. We didn't come here to hunt anyone. We came here to learn, to share, to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And we appreciate that, Vorn said, though he didn't sound appreciative. But we must think of the greater good. The safety of the Concordat must come first. Sarah looked around the chamber. Hundreds of eyes stared back at her. She saw fear in those eyes. They were all afraid of her and her crew. Afraid of what humans might do. She took a deep breath. Getting angry wouldn't help. She needed to think. May I speak? She asked. Of course, Vorn replied. Sarah stood straighter. She looked directly at the council members as she spoke. You're right about some things. Humans are predators. We evolved as hunters. We have sharp teeth and strong bodies, and we can run for hours without stopping. Those things are true. She paused. But you're wrong about what that means. Murmurs spread through the chamber. You think predators can only destroy, Sarah continued. You think violence is all we know. But you're forgetting something important. We're here. We built ships that can cross the stars. We created art and music and literature. We developed science and medicine. We did all of that despite our predatory nature, or maybe because of it. Pretty words, Counselor Prex said dismissively. But words don't change genetics. No, Sarah agreed. But choice does. She gestured to her crew. Dr. Okafor is a vegetarian. He chooses not to eat meat, even though his body is capable of it. Lieutenant Santos practices martial arts, but she's never used her skills to hurt anyone outside of training. Engineer Kim comes from a nation that was at war with my nation 100 years ago. Now we work side by side. Sarah's voice grew stronger. You're judging us on what we could do, on our potential for violence. But you're ignoring what we have done. We chose to reach out instead of strike out. We chose to explore instead of conquer. We chose to come here in peace. She looked at Vorn directly. And yes, we have wars in our history. Terrible wars. We've done awful things to each other and to our planet. But we also chose to stop. Again and again, we chose peace. We abolished slavery. We created international laws. We built organizations to promote cooperation. We had nuclear weapons that could destroy our entire planet, and we chose not to use them. The chamber was silent now. Everyone was listening. You have a database that lists every predator, Sarah said. But does it list every choice? Every time a species decided to be better than their instincts? Every moment when someone could have hurt someone else but chose kindness instead? She spread her hands. Judge us if you want. Lock us away if you must. But don't pretend it's because of what we are. It's because you're afraid of what we might become. And that's not justice. That's just fear. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then Vorn spoke. Your speech is moving, Captain Chen, but the Council has made its decision. Then I have a request, Sarah said. Give us 24 hours. Let us prepare a formal response to your charges. If you're going to condemn my entire species, at least give us a chance to defend ourselves properly. Vorn looked at the other council members. There was quiet discussion. Finally, he nodded. Very well. You have 24 hours. But Captain Chen... He looked at her seriously. I've been watching you this whole time. You haven't shown any fear. A prey species would be terrified right now. The fact that you're so calm, so controlled, only proves how dangerous you are. Sarah smiled slightly. Or maybe it proves that predators can choose to be civilized. The guards escorted the human delegation out of the chamber. As they walked through the corridors, none of them spoke. They were all too shocked. When they reached their quarters, Aisha finally broke down crying. Maria held her while David punched a wall in frustration. James sat down heavily, his head in his hands. Sarah stood by the window, looking out at the stars. 24 hours. They had 24 hours to change the minds of an entire galaxy. The door chimed. Sarah turned to see Kethra, the Velusian scientist, standing nervously in the doorway. Captain Chen? Kethra's voice was soft. May I come in? I think I can help you. Sarah looked at the young alien. She was clearly afraid, but she was there anyway. Yes, Sarah said. Please come in. We could use all the help we can get. Kethra entered, and the door closed behind her. Outside, the stars waited to see what would happen next. Kethra sat nervously in the human quarters. Captain Chen had offered her tea, which surprised her. She had expected anger or aggression. Instead, the captain was being kind. Thank you for coming, Sarah said, handing Kethra a cup of warm liquid. I know this must be difficult for you. Kethra held the cup carefully. I've been studying your species for 3 days now, the genetic data, your history, your culture, and I'm confused. Confused how? James asked. He sat across from her, his posture relaxed and open. The data says you're dangerous, apex predators. But everything I've observed says you're peaceful. You've been kind to everyone on this station. You helped a Quillan child yesterday. You say please and thank you. These are not predator behaviors. Why not? Sarah asked gently. Kethra blinked her 4 eyes. Because predators hunt. They kill. They see other species as food or threats. Is that what your database tells you? James leaned forward. Kethra, can I ask you something? Has the Concordat ever studied a successful predator species before? There are no successful predator species, Kethra replied. That's the point. They all destroy themselves. Exactly, James said. So your entire database is built on failure. You've only studied predators that didn't make it. You have no data on predators who survived and thrived. Kethra hadn't thought of it that way. That's true. Maria joined the conversation. Let me tell you about wolves. They're predators from Earth. They hunt in packs, and yes, they can be dangerous. But they're also loyal and protective. They take care of their young and their old. They work together. The pack is everything to them. Humans evolved from pack hunters too, Sarah added. We didn't hunt alone like your database probably expects. We hunted in groups, and that meant we had to cooperate. We had to communicate. We had to trust each other. David pulled up some images on a tablet. Look at these. Ancient human hunting parties. See how they're working together? One person drives the prey, others wait in position. It requires planning and teamwork. Kethra looked at the images. She had studied predators all her life, but always as individual threats. She had never considered that predators might need cooperation to survive. But cooperation is a prey behavior, she said slowly. Prey species work together for protection. Who told you that? James asked. Kethra, think about it. What's more difficult, running away from danger or hunting something that doesn't want to be caught? Hunting requires much more coordination than fleeing does. Kethra's mind was racing. Everything she had learned about predators was being turned upside down. Sarah spoke softly. You said we helped a Quillen child yesterday. You're right, we did. Do you know why? Why? Because protecting the weak is a predator instinct too, Sarah explained. When you hunt in packs, you protect your pack. The strong protect the weak. The healthy help the sick. And over time, that instinct expands. We don't just protect our families anymore. We protect our communities, our nations. And now we want to protect others too. But your teeth, Kethra said. You show them when you laugh. That's a threat display. Maria laughed, showing her teeth. Kethra flinched slightly. I'm sorry, Maria said, covering her mouth. But no, it's not a threat. For humans, showing teeth while smiling is a sign of happiness and friendliness. We don't do it to scare people. How do we know when you're actually threatening us? Kethra asked. You'll know, David said. Trust me. When a human is actually angry, you'll see it in their whole body, not just their face. We'll be tense, aggressive, loud. A smile is the opposite of that. Kethra thought about all the times she had seen humans smile over the past few days. They had been trying to be friendly, and everyone had interpreted it as threatening. We've made a terrible mistake, she whispered. Not yet, Sarah said. Not if we can make the council understand. That's why we need your help, Kethra. You're a scientist. You understand genetics. Help us explain what being a predator really means. They spent hours talking. Kethra asked questions and the humans answered. They explained concepts she had never encountered before. James talked about empathy. To hunt successfully, you have to understand your prey. You have to think like them, predict their movements. That requires empathy, the ability to understand how another creature thinks and feels. Humans developed strong empathy because of hunting, not despite it. Sarah discussed controlled aggression. We channel our competitive instincts into sports and games. We compete, yes, but with rules and boundaries. We invented ways to satisfy our predator drive without actually hurting anyone. Maria explained protective instincts. The same drive that made our ancestors defend their children makes us want to protect others now. When we see someone in danger, our instinct is to help, not to take advantage. David showed her human history. Yes, we've had wars, But look at the trend. Over time, we've become less violent, not more. We've created laws and international agreements. We've chosen peace over and over, even when war might have been easier. As the hours passed, Kethra began to see a pattern. Humans weren't predators who had overcome their nature. They were predators who had channeled their nature into something new. "You're not trying to stop being predators," she said slowly. "You're trying to be better predators." "Better protectors," Sarah corrected gently. "We still have the instincts, the drive to pursue challenges, the need to compete, the urge to protect our pack. But we've redefined what our pack is. It's not just our families or our nation anymore. It's everyone." Kethra stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the space station spinning slowly against the stars. Thousands of beings lived here. Prey species. All of them. They had built a civilization based on avoiding conflict. "We've been safe for so long," she said quietly. "The Concordat has existed for thousands of years. No wars, no conflicts. We achieved peace by making sure everyone was the same, everyone gentle, everyone afraid of violence." "And that worked," James said. "Until it didn't." Kethra turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" He pulled up a file on his tablet. "Kethra, we've been monitoring Concordat communications. We're not supposed to have access to classified information, but we're good with computers. There's something you're not telling us. Something about the Perseus arm." Kethra's skin changed color slightly. Humans wouldn't know what that meant, but she was shocked. The Perseus arm situation was highly classified. "How did you—" "We're persistent," Sarah said with a small smile. "It's a predator trait. We don't give up when we're hunting for information. Now, what's happening in the Perseus arm?" Kethra sat back down. She looked at each of the humans. They had been honest with her. Maybe she should be honest with them. "There's a dead zone," she said quietly. "An area where all communications have stopped. 17 colony worlds, silent for 6 months now. We sent investigation ships. None returned. And the Council doesn't know what's causing it," Sarah guessed. "No. But whatever it is, it's expanding, moving toward the core systems." The room was quiet for a moment. "You need us," David said finally. "That's why you're really here. You need predators." "I don't know," Kethra admitted. "I don't know what we need. I just know that the Council is terrified of the Perseus situation. And now of you." Sarah stood and placed a hand on Kethra's shoulder. The touch was gentle, not threatening. "We're not your enemy, Kethra. We want to help. But we can't do that if the Council locks us away." Kethra looked up at the captain. "What do you want me to do?" "Help us present our case tomorrow. Help the Council understand that predators can be protectors, that we're not here to hunt them. We're here to stand with them." Kethra thought about everything she had learned. The genetic data was still true. Humans were apex predators, dangerous and deadly when they wanted to be, but they were also capable of choosing not to be. "I'll help you," she said. "But I need to show the Council something they've never considered. We need to create a new classification, something the database has never tracked." "What's that?" Maria asked. Kethra smiled. It was a Velusian smile, very different from a human one, but Sarah thought it might mean the same thing. "Choice," Kethra said. "We need to show them that what you choose is more important than what you are." The council chamber was even more crowded than the day before. Word had spread about the human situation. Representatives from all 847 species wanted to see what would happen. Sarah stood in the center of the chamber again. Her crew stood with her. But this time, Kethra stood with them too. The young Velusian scientist looked nervous but determined. Administrator Vorn called the session to order. "Captain Chen, you requested this hearing. The council will hear your response to yesterday's ruling." Sarah stepped forward. She had not slept all night. Neither had her crew. They had worked with Kethra to prepare everything. Thank you, Administrator. Members of the Council, yesterday you told us we are apex predators. You're right. We are. We don't deny our nature, but we ask you to consider something you haven't thought about before. She gestured, and images appeared on the screens behind her. You've classified species by what they are. Predators, prey, omnivores. But you've never classified them by what they choose to become. Counselor Prex stood up. Captain, we don't have time for philosophy. The facts are clear. Your genetics make you dangerous. Our genetics make us capable, Sarah corrected. Whether we're dangerous depends on what we choose to do with that capability. James stepped forward. He brought up new data on the screens. Let me tell you about Earth's history. 5,000 years ago, humans lived in small tribes. We fought each other over food and territory. The average person lived 30 years and died violently. He changed the image. 2,000 years ago, we started building larger civilizations. We still fought, but we also created laws. Systems to resolve conflicts without killing each other. Life expectancy rose to 40 years. Another image. 1,000 years ago, we developed more sophisticated governments, international trade, cultural exchange, life expectancy, 50 years. More images flashed across the screens. 500 years ago, 200, 100, each time less violence, more cooperation, more peace. Today, the average human lives 90 years. Most of us will never experience violence in our entire lives. Maria took over. That's not because we stopped being predators. It's because we chose to channel our predatory instincts differently. We compete in sports instead of war. We hunt for knowledge instead of food. We pursue challenges instead of prey. David brought up more data. Look at our technology development. In the last 100 years alone, we went from basic flight to interstellar travel. We did it through cooperation. Scientists from every nation working together, sharing information, building on each other's discoveries. Sarah spoke again. You said every Class 7 predator destroys itself, but we didn't. Do you know why? Because we made a choice. The most important choice in our history. She pulled up an image of Earth from space. Beautiful and blue and fragile. 70 years ago, we developed nuclear weapons. Bombs that could destroy entire cities. We built enough of them to kill everyone on our planet 10 times over. We stood at the edge of extinction. 2 superpowers ready to fire, fingers on the button. The council chamber was silent. Everyone stared at the image. And we chose not to, Sarah said softly. We chose to step back from the edge. We created treaties, reduced our weapons, learned to talk instead of fight. It wasn't easy. It took decades. But we did it because we decided that surviving was more important than winning. Kethra stepped forward now. Her voice shook slightly, but she spoke clearly. Council members, I've spent 3 days studying humans. The genetic evidence says they're dangerous. But I propose a new classification, one based not on biology, but on behavior. She brought up new data on the screens. I call it symbiotic apex predator, a species that has all the capabilities of a predator, but chooses to use them for protection rather than hunting. Counselor Prex made a dismissive sound. That's just a fancy name for the same threat. Is it? Kethra challenged. She had never contradicted a council member before, but she continued anyway. Think about what predators do in nature. They control populations. They remove the sick and weak. They maintain balance. What if humans do the same thing, but consciously? What if they choose to protect rather than hunt? She pulled up the classified files about the Perseus arm. Gasps echoed through the chamber. You all know about this, Kethra said. 17 colonies, silent. We don't know what happened to them. We sent investigation ships. They didn't return. Something is out there, something that doesn't respond to our diplomatic signals, something that prey species don't know how to handle. Administrator Vorn stood angrily. Kethra, that information is classified. Yes, it is, Kethra agreed, and we've been hiding it because we're afraid. Afraid to admit that our civilization, built on peace and avoidance, might face something we can't run away from. She looked at the human delegation. But they're not afraid. When I told Captain Chen about the Perseus situation, do you know what she said? She said, we want to help, not we want to profit from your fear. Not, give us what we want, and we'll help. Just, we want to help. Because that's what protectors do. Sarah spoke again. You asked me yesterday why I wasn't afraid. I'll tell you, I wasn't afraid because I had no reason to be. You're not our enemies. You're people who need help. And yes, we're predators, but predators protect their pack. And we'd like you to be part of our pack. She gestured to her crew. Dr. Okafor is a vegetarian by choice. Lieutenant Santos has trained in combat but uses her skills to protect, not attack. Engineer Kim's grandmother was killed in a war, and he works every day to make sure no one else loses their grandmother the same way. Communications Officer Mensa lost her father to disease, and she joined our space program to find cures. Sarah's voice grew stronger. We're all predators. We all have the instinct to hunt and compete. But we've chosen to hunt for solutions, to compete against problems, to protect those who need protecting. That's what humans do. That's what we choose to do. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some members argued loudly. Others looked thoughtful. Councillor Prex stood to object again, but Speaker Thera raised her hand for silence. Enough, the old Volusian said. We will vote, but first, I have a question for Captain Chen. Yes, Speaker? If we accept you into the Concordat, and if we ask for your help with the Perseus situation, what would you do? Sarah didn't hesitate. We'd send ships. Scientists and soldiers both. We'd investigate, find out what's happening, and if there's a threat, we'd deal with it. Not because we want to fight, but because that's what you do for your pack. And if we deny your membership? Sarah smiled sadly. We'd go home, we'd respect your decision, but we'd worry about you, and if you ever changed your minds, we'd still be willing to help. Speaker Thera nodded slowly. That is what I thought you would say. She looked at the council members. We will now vote on a modified proposal. Earth will be granted provisional membership with a unique classification. Symbiotic Apex Predator. They will serve in protective and crisis response roles. Their capabilities will be used for the benefit of all Concordat members. Councillor Prex objected. This is madness. We're inviting predators into our home. No, Speaker Thera replied. We're inviting protectors. There is a difference. And if we cannot learn to recognize that difference, then we are not as civilized as we believe. The vote was called. Sarah held her breath as the results appeared. It was close, very close. But slowly, the numbers shifted. The vote passed. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Beside her, Aisha was crying openly. Maria and David hugged each other. James closed his eyes in relief. Kethra approached them, smiling. Welcome to the Concordat. Thank you, Sarah said. Thank you for believing in us. You taught me something important, Kethra replied. That what you are doesn't matter as much as what you choose. 6 months later, Kethra stood on the bridge of the CSS Unity, a joint Concordat human vessel. The ship was heading toward the Perseus arm, toward the mystery, toward possible danger. Captain Chen commanded the ship. Her crew worked alongside Concordat members at every station. Velusians, Quillans, Shardians, and humans all working together. Kethra had requested assignment to this ship. She wanted to understand humans better, to learn from them. And she had learned so much. She had learned that humans asked about her day and actually listened to the answer. That they shared their food even when they didn't have much. That they made jokes to ease tension and stayed up late helping anyone who needed help. She had learned that having human friends meant having people who would persistently check on you, who would hunt for solutions to your problems, who would protect you with the same intensity their ancestors had hunted prey. The alarm sounded. Something was emerging from the dead zone. Something big. Kethra felt afraid. But then she looked at Captain Chen. She watched the captain's posture change, saw her eyes sharpen, saw the predator awaken. But Kethra wasn't afraid of the captain. She was glad the captain was there. "All stations, battle ready," Chen ordered. "But remember, we investigate first. We only fight if we have to." The crew responded instantly, human and alien working together without hesitation. Chen looked at Kethra and smiled. A human smile showing teeth. Kethra understood it now. It wasn't a threat. It was confidence, determination, the expression of someone who was ready to face danger and protect those who needed protecting. "Ready, Kethra?" Chen asked. Kethra nodded. "Ready, Captain." Chen turned back to the view screen. "All right, crew. Let's go see what's out there. Time to do what predators do best." "Hunt?" someone asked. "Protect," Chen corrected. She leaned forward in her chair and her voice carried across the bridge. "Time to protect our pack." The ship moved forward into the unknown. On board were apex predators and prey species working together. The database had been updated. Humanity wasn't listed as a threat to be contained anymore. They were listed as protectors, as defenders, as pack members, as exactly what they had chosen to become. And the galaxy was better for it. Kethra wondered how a predator would react to being caged.